you're going to learn another type of factoring called PSA2. This is the second step of PSA factoring. This is going to allow you to factor more complicated trinomials. But before you do that, you have to learn this, which is factor by grouping. We've already done a question factor by grouping if you go back to the GCF style factoring that we did way back in earlier podcasts. But I think in this section, we really have to spend a lot more time in burning it into our brain. What do I mean by factor by grouping? Take a look at this question. Doesn't this look an awful lot like a PSA that we've done 100 times before, but we didn't add these two terms together? The big picture would have been x squared plus 9x plus 18, and we go from there, and everything's fine, right? Well, I want to avoid that for a second. I want to be able to break down this 9 into these two factors for a reason. Because if you actually PSA this, right, you will find out that's 18, that's 9. The two factors are, in fact, 3 and 6. Do you see that? That 3 and 6 I'm putting here and here. And there's a reason behind this in a second. Let me clean this up. Let me show you why, because this is going to take us right into PSA2, which is going to kind of freak you out at first. But boy, oh boy, it is just so powerful to do it this way. Watch what I'm going to do. Do you see what I did? I put brackets around the first two terms and brackets around the last two terms. Now, GCF. GCF is like one of the most powerful styles of factoring that you can do. And you're going to find the greatest common factor to these things. And if you look at these two terms, the greatest common factor is x. And if you divide this by x and divide this by x, you're going to get x plus 3. Now, check this out. There's the positive, same positive that was here. Now, GCF this. Look what you can take out. You can take out a 6. And if you do, divide this by 6, divide this by 6, watch what happens. You get an x plus, oh my goodness, these two things match. Oh my, is that ever powerful? Isn't that neat? So that means you can GCF once again. You can actually take an x plus 3 and an x plus 3 out, which is the greatest common factor of those two things, and look what you're left behind. You're left behind with x plus 6. This is actually factoring by grouping, which is going to take us to something called the decomposition method coming up real quick. And decomposition method is actually PSA2. So let's look at a couple more questions to see how this works. And then the next podcast, we're going to go on to PSA2, and we're just going to have a riot with it. So let's set things up properly first before we go on to PSA2. Again, there's 4 of them. Group factor. Out of this guy and this guy, you can take out a 3x. And if we do, remember, divide by 3x, giving you a 2x plus, yes, it's a 1. 3x over 3x is actually 1. And yes, you have to place it in there. There's the same positive. Factor out of here, a 4. And look what you're left behind with. Look how pretty this works. Oh my goodness. Look at how pretty this works. This works out so incredibly well. There's a 2x plus 1. There's a 2x plus 1. But you're saying, I bet you're saying to yourself right now, what if they don't match? If they don't match, you've done something wrong. Go back and GCF all over again. So take out the 2x plus 1. If you take out the 2x plus 1 out of both terms, and by scribbling them out like I just did, look what you're left with. 3x plus 4. There's your other factor. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Watch again. Same question, different numbers. Now notice what I did here. Notice that that number is a negative. Well, why? Because every one of these factors we've done always starts with a positive. So we might actually have to factor out a negative number right away just to make this work. Let's see. Out of this, notice that you can take out a 4a. Okay? This leaves you with a 2a. Take out a 4a. Minus 1. But look what happens if I don't take out a negative. That's a negative positive, which doesn't match this. This is a positive negative. This is a negative positive. So how do I do this? What do I do? Well, the thing that you do is very, very simple. You take out, when you're GCFing, you take out a negative. If you take out a -5, which is common to this guy and this guy, look what happens. By taking out a -5, this -10 becomes a positive 2a. Taking out a -5 from here, okay, taking out a -5 from here, this +5 over -5 becomes a -1, and now they match. See how important it is to make sure that these guys match. If they don't match, like I said, go back and check your GCF and make sure you've done it right. So take out the 2a minus 1, scribble this guy out, scribble this guy out, and look what you're left with. You're left with a 4a minus 5. This technique of group factoring is going to be incredibly important in our next style of factoring called PSA2.